Greetings, New Life. This is Pastor Jared Nelson, bringing you another of my most influential books. And this one will be a little bit different in that it is not a modern book necessarily. It's not a really old 1600-year-old book like the Confessions, but actually a very practical book that has been very helpful for me. And maybe this is something that would be most helpful for others to hear about. Most influential devotional for me. And that devotional is by a guy named Charles Spurgeon, and that is Morning and Evening. Morning and Evening is a collection of little snippets from his sermons and reflections. And if you don't know who Spurgeon was in some ways the first megachurch pastor, accidentally. He was just a preacher in England in the 1800s, and people just started flocking to hear him preach, mostly, I think, because most of the churches in England at the time were Church of England, and the Church of England was kind of in a dry spell. It was an established church. Many people were, if you were a pastor or preacher there, it was because your parents had told you that's what you're supposed to do. That was a position of influence within powerful people, but most of the lay people didn't really care about your sermons because it seemed like you didn't really care about them. Well, along comes this guy who is not in the established church, Charles Spurgeon, and he starts to preach, and people are coming to hear him because it seems like he actually believes the things that he's preaching. Now, he also was very close, although he was Baptist, he was very close to Reformed teaching. He got into a bit of trouble because of that. Wrote a defense, in fact, of Reformed doctrines that we are totally depraved, unable to come to God unless he comes to us, and that his grace is irresistible. But he was also one of the greatest evangelists of the 1800s, which tells you, if you believe in the sovereignty of God, you believe in sovereign grace, it is not opposed to evangelism. In fact, some of the greatest evangelists, whether it's Charles Spurgeon, whether it's Adoniram Judson, whether it is John Patton, or William Carey, or Jonathan Edwards, or George Whitefield, some of the greatest evangelists were those that believed in God's sovereign grace. They believed in predestination and election, but they also believed that the gospel was the means by which God was bringing his own to himself, and that you could trust his means and just proclaim it and not have to do anything special or fancy, just proclaim the simple truth of the gospel. And this is a collection of not only 365, but 730, I believe, reflections, because you have morning and evening reflections on some verse from Scripture. They're only a page long. Sometimes, though, it takes you a little bit longer to read because each sentence is packed because it's Spurgeon. But this has been something that, while I'll do other devotionals, I'll come back to this, and this is always golden. There's always something worth reflecting on and thinking about for morning and evening. And since at one point we had used his reflections on heaven as a devotional as the church about 5 years ago, you might be interested in this too. If you enjoyed his reflections there, you will really enjoy morning and evening as a devotional work that doesn't just give you little snippets or give you a feel-good, but actually makes you think about a passage of Scripture and apply it to your life. So that's my influential books on me. The most influential devotional on me is Morning and Evening by Charles Spurgeon. Thanks.